Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you.
Hello, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineering Watch Radio for February 28th, 2014. Still hot and dry here in the West. We had a supposed rainfall yesterday, in which no rainfall, virtually none. This is more how it is in our neck of the woods constantly. Got Russ with us today as always. We'll start taking calls early so we can try to answer as many as possible. Just talked to Russ off the air about the record snowfall in his neck of the woods there. And this is what we've said the whole time. This is the goal, to create headlines in certain regions, to only cover those regions, to not highlight the fact that we have the Sierra Nevadas almost devoid of snow. This is a very high mountain range, almost devoid, 15, 16% of the normal snowfall. Can't have snow when they won't let precipitation pass over. And the temperatures are very high anyway. Snow level is extremely high. But there's really not much there, and that's going to continue as long as the climate engineers make it continue. On another note, a little different subject today, but it matters. I want to just touch on the fact that what are we teaching our kids in school? What is the system teaching them? Most people have heard of Common Core, and certainly the criticism against those programs is very deserved. What do our children know about what it will take to keep this planet alive and for them to survive on this planet? They don't know much. They don't teach them anything in school. I can tell you that firsthand. I was walking through my children's school. They go to a charter school sometime back, and a faculty member, which I didn't recognize or know, but she came up to me and paid me a compliment that I certainly am grateful for. She said, "Your kids so think out of the box." I was very grateful for that compliment, but I wish there was more that the school system would help to teach them as well, because they're learning nothing functional. They're learning to perform in a system that is disintegrating by the day. That's what our school systems are teaching them, that this notion that you have to have certain courses and certain levels of knowledge in certain areas that won't be applicable for much longer. The system that we've known is disintegrating by the day, absolutely disintegrating by the day. So what do our children know that can help them survive in this world? How many, even if they have parents who won't acknowledge elephants, herds of elephants in the room, like the climate engineering programs and all the other areas that you can't deny, or no one rationally can deny can't continue. You can't continually expand on a finite planet. That's pretty simple. We have a whole of academia, as we've mentioned before. We have dozens of articles out from the mainstream science sources, mainstream media sources, talking about spraying sulfate aerosols in the sky. One is if it's not going on already, and two, nobody ever mentions. I've yet to see a science study mention that, oh, by the way, we have to breathe all this. Just like the question I posed to David Keith at the AAAS conference in San Diego in 2010, when he seemed dumbfounded that I would pose that question. Mr. Keith, has any study been done on human respiratory effects? And we saw how he put his leg down his throat on that one. He didn't want that question. He's careful not to accept questions like that now anymore, but how incredibly trained and conditioned and willfully blind is our society when such a simple question can't be answered, something a 10-year-old could think of. And yet we don't have that question coming up. I've had my kids in the woods about once a week for most of their lives in inclement weather and sometimes pouring rainstorms, because I don't want them to be fair-weathered people that just can only function if all the conditions are right. We've been in the woods with the tarp up, pouring rain, and maybe caught enough fish to cook before the rain came down, and they like it all. In the snow, we've been out in the snow multiple times, and they've been in the woods a lot in their life, and they understand it. They understand we're part of that system. We're part of something much bigger. It's not about Walmart or McDonald's. It's about a whole biosphere. And if that biosphere doesn't function, we don't function. And we have, again, academia trying to think of something, some way to capture this carbon, some sort of elaborate, expensive, energy-intensive system to pull in the very carbon that this new system will actually be producing in order to make it. It doesn't make any sense. Don't we have, as we've said before, don't we have a mechanism that's perfectly designed to uptake carbon and release oxygen, a tree? How come kids aren't being taught to plant trees? Why isn't society even the slightest bit awake and moving in a direction that could change the outcome that we're certainly headed to right now? Kids know nothing about the environment. They poke on their iPhones. They don't even look up. There's no connection to anything. When I was a kid, I spent my days wandering around in the wilderness, literally. And now it's not existent. In fact, I saw a test on a college campus where they put jugglers and all sorts of other distractions to try to get the college kids that were walking on, tapping on their iPhones to even look that direction. They wouldn't even look. You could set their heads on fire, I think, before they would take a look around. But the bottom line is we're in a system that's crumbling by the day, and yet the system, of course, pushes the same broken, horribly flawed, completely unsustainable paradigm that it was built on, that you have to get this college education for particular vocations that won't even exist for much longer, literally. So at what time does that paradigm change? Of course, now, what are they pushing now? I don't know how long our kids are going to be in school if they push this vaccination issue. I'm not going to let my kids get vaccinated. That's that. So we'll see how far this paradigm goes. But even people I know in this charter school who are supposed to be the faculty, who are supposed to be the more expanded consciousness type of people, absolutely willfully blind. Can't wake them up. They're worried about their jobs. They're reluctant even to talk about issues of importance. And in fact, at this charter school, during a quote-unquote Christmas presentation once, a music teacher played a video that looked like something from a Hitler Youth program. It was this nationalistic song and showed the American flag draped over tanks and all over the place. It truly looked like some kind of a propagandistic, nationalistic Hitler Youth type program. I was livid after the show, and I went up to tell the faculty how incredibly inappropriate the whole show was. That music teacher was fired in the end for that. But this is the sort of thing the schools are susceptible to, because the particular school my kids are in was funded by an organization that's clearly connected with the power structure. They pretend to be an environmentally minded organization, but where's the money come from? So then those who take that money have to conform with the message that they want put out. So bottom line is it all comes back to the money. For the kids in school, for the agencies, for the politicians, it all goes back to the central bank money printing machine that runs the planet, or has. But no matter how much money they print, when the resources are gone, that's the end of the road. And I hear people talking about, I was on a radio show recently where a caller called in and tried to make the point that it's ludicrous that we could have any population issue on the planet, because doesn't everybody know that you could put everybody in the state of Texas? What does that have to do with anything? I hope people start to really think about, I'm not advocating what the power structures are advocating. If we need to cut population, they should be the first ones to go. They're the ones that have helped create this power paradigm, but our population has bought into it as well. And people need to start thinking clearly. It's not about room on the planet. It's about resources. So if we're to have any effect in gaining credibility, teaching our kids how to sustain themselves on a planet, we have to look at things through a realistic lens. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers with any particular belief system, but I'm just simply saying if we have a sense of reason, we have to use it. We have to use it. So when we have oceans that are now just about devoid of fish completely, I don't care if everybody can fit in the state of Texas. There's nothing to eat. That's pretty simple. We have climate engineers that are destroying the planet's ability to respond to the damage being done. Now in California, I don't know what the harvests are going to be, but it's not going to be very good. If you drive down I-5, which is the main corridor through the state, and look at all the orchards, they look terrible. They look absolutely terrible. I don't know how they're producing anything. We can't produce anything where I live, in spite of how hard we try. So, again, there's nothing to eat. Doesn't matter if you have enough room to walk around, you still have to eat. So, again, from so many directions, our society is so incredibly blind to reality. Our citizens are blind to reality, from the spraying above our heads to the reality of no more fish left in the oceans, to the reality of you can't perpetually expand on a finite planet. We all need to start looking through the lens realistically. And that involves a lot of other things too, like the fact that we're not going to fix this by voting. There's so many areas where people are just delusional when they're thinking. You don't have paperless voting machines for legitimate voting. It's because everything's rigged. Everything's fixed, top to bottom. Our whole paradigm is a lie from top to bottom. The sooner we face that, the better chance we might have of changing course into a paradigm that's not a lie, a paradigm that may be sustainable still, if we can stop the destruction while there's still something left to salvage. So on that note, I want to take calls on as soon as we can, but Russ, I want you to, if you can take the floor now and tell us what it's like where you're at, because it's really different where I'm at.
Well, here I'm outside Bangor, Maine, and we have record snow on the ground. I lived in Jamestown for several years, Jamestown, New York, which is western New York, before I moved here, and we get lake effect snow. And, you know, that's the same type of snow that Buffalo gets, and Buffalo's notorious for getting huge amounts of snowfall. You go to bed and you wake up and there's like 3 feet of snow in the driveway. Well, this winter it's been like this, and they've set records, I think, that go back to either 96 or 2006 right now on the ground. I've never seen it like this. So that's the difference that I'm seeing here, Dane.
On that lake effect, when that happened earlier in the year and they focused only on a couple towns right there by Buffalo where the snow was so deep, it's all the Weather Channel talked about. That's a tiny, tiny little corner of the country, but that's all they sensationalized. And those lakes were warm. They were quite warm going into this year. You know, they're mostly frozen over now, and that's what chemical nucleation can do and jet stream manipulation. But those small areas where they train the air in order to create the sensational headlines, just like what you see where you're at, and it's still a small part of the world in general. Again, the eastern half of the lower 48 is 1/200th of the Earth's surface area. That's not very much. So when we're here in the west, again, with mountains without snow, streams that are already running low, and we're in the middle of winter, I don't even want to think about what summer's going to be like, and they won't let it rain here. They just won't. I mean, we post the maps again and again. I hope people are looking at those maps. I hope people are looking at the animation I just put in a short video several days ago called Engineered Winter, Engineered Drought. And that's exactly what we have. And when you see that animation, you see the flow of moisture coming across the Pacific that looks like it's hitting a wall. Because it is. Atmospherically, it's hitting a wall. They won't let that moisture flow in. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But I would argue if we look at every factor right now, a little background going there, Russ, I don't know if you can hear that. If we look at every single factor right now, from the fact that the Baltic Dry Index, and those who don't know what that is, that's the leading indicator for global, the most untarnished indicator for global economic activity. It's all shipping from anywhere to anywhere. BDI, Baltic Dry Index, absolutely crashed. Things aren't shipping. The whole notion of an expanding economy is a total facade. The stock market being pumped up is completely artificial. So let's connect this back with the lack of fish, the crop crashing. This paradigm isn't going to stay in its current state much longer, not much longer at all. So these records they're creating, like where Russ is at, and the lake effect, snowfall in different areas, it's all about keeping the confusion and division going and the appearance of normalcy to some degree, that there's normal winter at least somewhere. but they're just trying to hide everything they can till the last possible moment. So we'd be wise to realize that. I know, Russ, when you're in that kind of cold, it's hard to imagine that it's so warm somewhere else, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of people to really imagine, but those maps that you post, that we posted in the chat room so often, just tell the story. We have the dividing line down the center of the United States. The left half of the United States is way over average temperatures, and the eastern part of the United States is way under, and we see that over and over and over again.
Well, the unique thing about the eastern half of the U.S. is it's colder, more anomalously cold than anywhere else in the whole world. We just saw ocean temperatures from around Australia. They're in the 30-degree C range. I mean, that's extremely warm, extremely warm. So, again, can't hide this stuff much longer. Oh, well, let's open up the phone lines, Russ, and we'll see if we can't get some dialogue going.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to call in, we have callers already in the queue, I'm glad to say, but we still have room for several more callers, so anybody wants to call in, the number is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And if you're ready to speak with anyone, just let me know, Dane.
Yeah, let's take one there.
Okay, caller with your number that ends in 03. Who are we speaking with? Caller with your number that ends in 03. You there? Okay, we'll move on. Caller with your number that ends in 50. Who are we speaking with?
Alan, David.
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
Hey, Alan.
I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. I just had a couple of questions. Dane or anyone, who hears this, who can call in, are you aware of if they've tested the water in the reservoirs in California? And if so, what are the results?
I am aware of that. In fact, I have friends at Fish and Game, friends at Cal EPA. A lot of the tests are showing aluminum. In fact, where they're showing the most aluminum is behind the dams. Should be not a surprise. We know that's where it all has to settle in and accumulate. One Fish and Game biologist I know, senior biologist, has been, I think the term she used was hammered every time she tries to bring up the fact that there's a quite extreme level of aluminum contamination in the sediments behind these dams, and she's virtually being shut up about it. And we have a Congressman Doug LaMalfa. People can see my most recent conversation with him if you Google GeoEngineeringWatch.org confronting a congressman, where I served him and his staff up data from Cal EPA proving aluminum running in our waterways in Northern California. The official response from he and his staff were they don't recognize these EPA tests as being valid. So we're up against quite a wall at that point when they refuse to recognize any data, even if it's from their own agencies. So yes,
okay. I'm gonna try to if I can get a hold of anything, data like that. I'll send you an email or something. But I'm starting the administrative process. That's why I'm asking these questions. I have to get some data together. I'm doing that. I'm getting a lot of things, putting in some Public Records Act requests to various agencies and doing some other. I'm going to be eventually doing some to the federal, and I'm getting it ready because I'm going to be doing some administrative appeals process before I actually put together what is going to go into the courts. So that's why I'm asking, and I'm going to be pursuing that information. And maybe
please keep us posted on that. I mean, even a filing of that type of suit and the attention that would gain if it's done properly would be hugely helpful to our cause.
Yeah, before I do anything, it's going to go out to you and a number of people. So you're going to have it all before anything's ever filed anywhere. You're going to know. You're going to have opportunity to put out your criticisms, input, suggestions, whatever. So I'm not doing this on my own. This isn't going to be a one-man deal here because it's not going to work if I try to do that. So
there's also others involved, Alan. There's a physicist, Marvin Herndon, who I published a letter of his sometime back. He addressed the San Diego officials, but I communicate with Marvin just about every day. There's another science editor that is part of our immediate circle that I communicate with almost every day as well. So we'll try to get some other input in that too, Alan. And thank you for your efforts on that. And they may have some data that might be helpful to you too, because Marvin is compiling some of the aluminum contamination data as well, which is of course surfacing all over the globe.
Yeah, I'll be trying to pursue that and tabulate everything I can, and I'll be in touch.
Keep us posted on your efforts, Alan. Thank you very much, and again, we'll look forward to seeing something from you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great, thank you, Alan. We've got a couple more callers who are waiting to talk. I wanted to real quickly run a question from the chat room by you, Dane. Bud on the chat room asks, the Russians are getting concerned about the size and the scope of the methane release in Siberia, but in Alaska and Canada, similar methane release is occurring on a similar scale. Why is the government of the USA and Canada not researching this and keeping people informed? Are they afraid of the fact that climate change is moving to a new stage of acceleration?
Absolutely, they're afraid, and they don't want any of that type of data out. Why did the Canadian government muzzle the Canadian scientists that were on the the ozone depletion teams? I mean, they're virtually muzzled. They cannot talk to media, and people can Google this, search this, Canadian government ozone depletion silencing scientists, into that kind of category. This is business as usual. They sweep everything under the rug. Everything. From the fish die-offs that we're seeing off the U.S. West Coast that appear to be related to seabed gassing of methane and hydrogen sulfide, the official agency task in the U.S. is to hide the truth. That's their job. EPA, air quality, to hide the truth. So while we have, for example, CARB, California Air Resources Board, penalizing private farmers to make them buy new diesel engines for their vehicles, while at the same time completely ignoring a mountain of toxic heavy metals falling from the climate modification programs, that's their job. To hide the crimes of the power structure and penalize the population, that's their job. I've spoken in front of the whole California Energy Commission with a room full of farmers, and they admitted in that meeting that they don't do anything about the climate engineering programs because it's not in their jurisdiction. The whole system is set up, it's totally fraudulent, Russ, but the bottom line is people should be concerned about the methane. We've talked about it for years. I have editorials that I've had published going back a decade plus on this issue, and it's happening as we knew it would. It had to happen. Once methane thaws, it's going to release, and it's releasing. So everybody should keep their eye on that, and let's keep trying to help sound the alarm. But the rub is this: when the climate science community like AMEG is calling for emergency wartime scale, that's their quote, not mine, climate engineering to be implemented, that's where these organizations are absolutely disinformation. They're lying. They certainly know this is going on. They can't not know it's going on, and they're simply lying and covering for the power structure when they call for this to be done as if it hasn't been being done for the last 65 years, and clearly harming, not helping. So anyway, the clearer we all are in the actual dots and where they go together, the better we're going to pass on information to other people, the more credibility we'll have.
Absolutely. Dane, isn't this a form of disinformation? I mean, this is what they do, is they say, we're thinking about doing the geoengineering in the future when they're doing it right now, and that just disarms the public in a way.
It's total disinformation. It's criminal disinformation, absolutely criminal. And everybody who's pretending it's not going on when they know better, or they should know better, because ignorance when you're supposed to know, when that's your job to know, it's your job to inform the public, that's not an excuse. Ignorance is not an excuse. So these people should all be held criminally liable when we get this issue out in the open once and for all. Fully agree, Russ.
It's just like I called the Department of Air Quality in Maine, and I talked to them about the trails and the odors in the air that were being emitted. We had a jet every 2 minutes for 8 hours one day, and they told me, Melanie Loisem, who was the head at that time, told me that, in fact, she's still the head at this time, I believe. She told me that it must just be air traffic into Bangor Airport. And Bangor Airport doesn't even have that traffic, much less along one flight path. It's like they know better, just didn't want. It's just astonishing to me.
Well, when you make a call like that, or when anybody listening makes a call like that, it's important to write down who you talked to, what their statement was, and then let that person know that you're keeping track of what they said, when they said it, and that when this issue comes out in the open, you're going to ask them in front of a larger population to explain why they denied the issue that they should have known about, or perhaps did know about and didn't talk about. So it's always, I think, imperative to, again, write down the details of such conversations and let the person know, the official know, that you are keeping track of this and that they will have to explain their position at some time in the near future so that they understand that it's not okay to lie to protect your paycheck and pension. It's not okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Accountability is absolutely critical. Well, we got a bunch of callers waiting. Call with your number that ends in 03. Who are we speaking with? 03 caller, you called in about 5 minutes ago. You with us?
If everybody calling in can kind of keep track of when your number's up, we'll try to get to you, but need to keep track of that.
Yeah, let's listen to the phone. Don't listen to the stream because the stream's about 30 seconds behind what you're listening to on the phone. So caller was 03. I think I heard you speak up. Are you there? Last two digits in your number are 03. You with us?
Yes, I am.
There you go. Who are we speaking with?
Excuse me. This is Allie Larkin in Des Moines, Washington.
Hi, Allie.
And I so appreciate what all of you fellows are doing and how you have educated me and helped me to educate others. I became, well, I think I've always been an activist. I just didn't know it. But fluoride woke me up in 2006. Then it was chemtrails, then electromagnetic radiation, microwave frequencies. And so I stay really busy because I can dedicate a lot of time to my research and studying this. But I'm also a water commissioner. And I've been in front of Board of Health. I'm also a beach naturalist. This is what gripes me here. They're not testing the waters of Puget Sound for metals. They're testing for 19 chemicals, but no, not for metals.
This is across the board. I'll let you continue, Allie, in a minute, but this is across the board. Again, I've mentioned this before. I've had high-level EPA meetings in Sacramento, told to my face what they are and aren't testing for. They're mandated to test for specific components, and everything else goes out the window. If you wanted to find something, wouldn't you test for whole panels of elements to look for anything that might be in there? But they do not do that. You can't find what you're not looking for in state water quality. Here in California, by the way, the supposedly environmentally conscious state stopped testing for aluminum in water in 2002. They stopped. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I find it really, really kind of interesting how these people just ignore us and all of that. And we've done something really interesting here in Seattle regarding the smart meters in the Seattle Council. We're taking in common law, and we have filed them a notice of liability on the harm from smart meters. And, of course, they have dismissed us with words and not documents. So we did it again. And this is a formal notice of liability. And we're getting ready now to send them a bill because we put a lien on them for not meeting this. They've even brought in the Attorney General. So, you know, when you use these common law things to hold people accountable, we're really testing that here in Seattle. And that can be applicable on anything that's causing us harm.
Please keep us posted of your progress there. I'd be very interested to see how all that unfolds. And especially there in Seattle, you guys had about the beginning of the year, you had the rotten egg smell air for several days there, correct?
Yes.
And there was no official agency explanation for that, was there?
No, none at all. None at all.
So this is where, again, and we had reports all along the California coast. If this is hydrogen sulfide, this is extremely serious. And that's the sort of thing that they are completely trying to cover up. In fact, so many things are being covered up from so many directions that the soup that we're all swimming in, the toxic soup, is going to be lethal soon. And this is where, again, people like you are so important, and agencies that will help get this out in the open. But please keep us posted of your progress.
Well, yeah, because, you know, the other situation we have here is the Navy wanting to do their electromagnetic training in the Olympic Peninsula. And
we watched that. Yeah, we've been watching that unfold. We've been posting on that.
It goes all the way down the West Coast.
It does. Well, this is where, again, the cavalier attitude of the military to destroy and permanently contaminate the world is astounding. I had a conversation with the Navy's PR person about 4 years ago on I mentioned this before, but on their use of depleted uranium ammunition for practice off the California coast. Again, it's no wonder everything's dying when you couple that with Fukushima, with no plankton because of excessive UV and, you know, 100 other issues. So, but they don't care. They don't care, and until the public holds them accountable, they're going to keep behaving the way they behave.
Yeah, and do you know that fluoride is part of depleted uranium? A little connection there. But some good news, we have a wonderful public lands commissioner here, Peter Goldmark, and he just gave the Navy notice that they are not allowed to use the roads.
Well, those are huge steps. Those are huge steps. In fact, I would be grateful if you can inform me, keep us informed. If, in fact, if you stay on to the end of the call, we can give you emails and so forth. But I would like to be kept in the loop on what kind of progress you make there, because we would like to get posts up on that for other people to use as templates to help get their officials to start behaving in a reasonable manner.
Yes, and I did post on your website you had a link about vaccinations about a fellow I work with here, attorney James Robert Deal. He's a member of Washington Action for Safe Water, where we're advocating for fluoride-free water, and I'm vice president on that board. But he has just released a state of the nation, a report on vaccinations. And it's one that everyone needs to read and share, because it's really a game changer what he has now put out there, and it's on your website. I linked it to your posting.
I'll go back and look, Allie. Thank you very much for that. You guys are on the ball up there then, and I hope other people take that as a template to start to hold their officials to the same standards. Because truly, if we look at the trajectory of certain aspects right now of the equation we face, I can't imagine that we're going to go much further without some very big shock waves hitting us all, and they're simply trying to hide that till the last possible moment. So anyway, the more seeds we sow of awareness right now, we can change the flavor of what we face as this transition really picks up speed.
Well, Dane, I couldn't do what I do about the geoengineering and that without you. And I would like you to know that your little quarter black and white flyers, 4 to a page, I carry them with me. When I'm in parking lots, wherever I go, if there are chemtrails in the air and there's a person I can walk up to and I can point up at the sky and say, "What do you see up there?" And I wait for their explanation. Are you still there?
I am listening intently.
Oh, okay. And I wait for their explanation, and depending on what it is, I just said, well, what you think you're seeing is not what you're seeing, and you need to do some research. Please check this out, and I give them a flyer and go on my way.
Yeah, having something to pass on, very important. I mentioned last week the business card size informational sheets will have, those will be available on the site as well, too. So anything like that, what you have, just a credible bit of data with
hundreds of them.
Good, thank you. That's all those that kind of seed sowing is imperative right now, because people, no matter how much they might be resistant to the information at the moment, as they see things happening around them, just like the methane blowholes that we're seeing in Siberia, once they start to see a key bit of data here and there, that seed will sprout. And now we have one more person in our ranks helping to spread the word. So thanks for what you're doing, Allie. Thank you very much, and I'll look for your post and see if I can't get up to speed on what you guys are doing up there.
Okay, I'll do what I can there.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you very much.
Allie, thank you so much for what you're doing. Caller with a number that ends in 67. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're
good.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, my name's Brad. I'm calling from Kentucky, and we've had a mild winter here up until a couple of weeks ago, and then we just got covered by over a foot of snow, and how anyone can think that that's normal weather is I don't understand. I've been observing the sky since I was a kid, and I didn't start noticing the trails until like the late 90s, and I knew what I was looking at was not natural, and I've tried to talk about it with other people, and even an aircraft mechanic, and they just thought I was crazy. And but I like technology, I'm sure, as well as you do, but when it gets to the point where you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, then it's a problem, you know.
Well, this is, to elaborate on a couple of things you said, and I fully agree with everything. I mean, most people can't recognize what a real cloud looks like anymore. So when you talk about weather not being natural, and you notice it because you're awake and aware, but a lot of people are so asleep at the wheel that even when we have extremes like we saw in Amarillo, Texas, May 1st, 2013, 100 degrees in the ground, all-time record high, snowed the next day. You can't rationally think that that's normal, but people buy it as normal. And on the technology issue, yes, it's made life comfortable, but for how long? If we've sacrificed any chance at a future for a few years of comfort, that was a bad trade. And what I teach my children, if someone was to ask them what the most important rule would be if we are to have another chance at rebuilding, they would say this, and I'm confident they would say this, they know this, they would say if it's bad for the planet, it's bad for us. That's simple. Mm-hmm. That's a rule we should live by, I think. And then, if we have another chance, we should all incorporate such basic premises.
And I kind of had a bit of a revelation when I noticed that when we got all this bad weather, that all the stores around here were sold out of everything. And you can find a shovel, you cannot find a heater, you cannot find de-icing compound, nothing. And so I realized what part of this agenda, it's disaster capitalism, isn't it?
Well, it is. And this is where, again, people who don't understand what that implies, you have the parts of the planet called the commons. And when you sell off the commons to those who claim to have the right to buy it, this is where the Native Americans didn't understand that concept. It wasn't that they were so stupid that they traded Manhattan Island for a box of beads. They simply just didn't understand the concept of ownership. How do you own the commons? And no one has a right to destroy the commons, whether it's the air, the water, and certainly no greater assault against all of the commons than climate engineering. No one has that right. And in fact, in the food issue, just to elaborate on what you said, because you brought up a great point, people have no concept of just how delicate a balance this whole industrialized civilization is. Here's a headline from China. China farming boom has left ecosystems in danger of total collapse. China's push for more intense farming has kept its city dwellers well fed and helped lift millions of rural workers out of poverty, but it has come at a cost. What a surprise. Ecosystems in what should be one of the country's most fertile regions have already been badly damaged, some beyond repair, and the consequences will be felt across the globe as this region collapses. It's happening everywhere. You can't take nature and grind it up into money and think it's going to last very long, and that's what we've done.
Mm-hmm. And where are you, how do you, what, as far as the coal ash, fly ash, do you agree with that's what it is, or, because it makes sense that they would use that because they can't, it's hard to get rid of. I mean, as far if you try to do it in a environmentally friendly way.
I'm with
right.
you on that. I'll ask Russ's opinion here in a minute too, but I think that it's a lot of those dots connect. It may be a base material. It's not the only material, and that's the problem I had with that initial release was it implied that this is the material, that's it. It's the only thing being used, and there were other things stated about again, certain people being the head of these programs that historically are absolutely not. And there were other issues that, again, I wish were not in that particular piece, because the coal ash itself, that the possibility of that being a base material, I think that that was very insightful from, I know the person who put that article out, and I'm grateful that they've brought this up, because I think that they're right on target with that it could very well be a base material, especially when we know that there's been peer-reviewed study on using steel slag, iron ore processing slag. I did an article on this about a week and a half ago for ocean iron fertilization. So in both cases, a lot of this industrial waste may be part of the base material. So yeah, I think there could very well be something to that now.
Yeah, because we know that they're pumping toxic waste into the ground, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
why would they hesitate to use coal ash?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I
so,
yeah.
But one last thing is that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'll get Russ's take on that. Russ?
Yeah, let me pitch in on that. I mean, I'm one of those people, and I've met many others too, who can smell and taste these things in the air, and there's a wide variety. I've written an article where I've identified 10 completely different smells and tastes, from sulfur to what smells like freshly cut grass in the wintertime, which some people have said is attribute of phosgene gas, and a whole other array of odors. And I've got a lot of reports from other people all around the world who are smelling the same similar odors. The one we're having here very commonly, one of the two most common that we're having here outside Bangor, one is aluminum. And I know what aluminum tastes like. I know what that aluminum powder from being in machine shops when you're working on aluminum, when that dust is in the air, it has a distinct flavor. So
yeah, it has a very, very distinct odor or taste. Yeah,
it sure does. And when you're working on different metals in a machine shop, you get a little bit of a sense of what those metals taste like. So one is really, really strong aluminum, and that's one thing that's real common here. So I think there's a lot more than coal ash going on here.
Well, that's Russ's point is what, I fully agree with what he's saying, and that's where we can't think dichotomously it's all this or that. And again, it may very well be a base material, because a lot of the constituents that we see in tests are primary elements in coal ash. But as Russ indicates, and I agree with him completely, there's a lot of layers to this onion, and we can't really put it in all one box. But it certainly could be a base material for certain applications. That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again for bringing attention to this issue. I think that we just need to do whatever we can to make people aware of this issue. Because it is an important. I mean, it is a very important thing that. I mean, like you said before, it's probably one of the most important issue affecting our planet.
I would argue not one of, but it's the most important issue, because if we cannot breathe without sucking this stuff in, and this is where the basic building blocks for sharing awareness are so important, whatever the material constituents are, we can safely say they're toxic. They're toxic, no question. The lab tests prove it. So if we know they're spraying toxic material on us, that's nothing short of biological warfare, in addition to decimating the biosphere as a whole, then that's something that should concern everybody. And no matter what else we face, if we can't breathe without pulling this stuff in, and it's damaging our ability to think clearly, it's damaging our health, we're not going to face any challenge soon. So that's where I would argue, again, from really any reasonable perspective, climate engineering should be seen as the greatest and most immediate threat, even above nuclear at this point, short of nuclear cataclysm, nuclear war. But short of that, again, we can't face anything if we don't deal with this issue first. And
also, just one more thing I want to say, and I'll give it up to someone else here, but
we lost you.
Yep, we just lost him. He got disconnected. Okay, caller with your number. Sorry about that, Brad. I don't know what happened, but line just went dead. Caller with your number that ends in 2525. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, who are we speaking with?
This is Dave at Citrus Heights.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dane. I have been listening to your show now probably for a month. I didn't even know it existed, but I'm really glad I found it. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I was first introduced to this stuff back in, I'd say 2005 with some friends that were talking about this Project Blue Beam and Morgellons disease and all these kind of things, conspiracies. And I blew it off. I'm a automation refrigeration engineer type. And as I started looking into what was going on, I started following the money, and I think this is my first time calling into anything for anything, so just so you know that.
Well, I'll let you continue on, but thank you for doing that, because we need participation. We can't win this battle without all of us pulling together. The wheel won't roll without all of us, so thanks for participating. Continue on.
I was watching a local newscast here last week, and this is kind of like what got me started down into actually participating. She said if you look up this morning, this is 5:30 in the morning, and I go outside every morning at 4 o'clock, and I look around, and she says, oh, there's just some normal jet contrails going on. And I look up, so I get my camera on. I'm out there taking pictures of these horrendous crosshatches going across the sky, which go across every day, by the way, here, like you know. And because I'm just right down the road from you. I have 11 grandkids. They all live around here. The weather, none of it's normal. Everything is distorted. Back in the 80s, we used to have rain where it would actually rain and flood, and we actually in '86 almost lost our house to the floods. And I'm just disgusted. Well, my neighbor caught me looking at the sky and taking pictures, which I sent into this news station, and said, you know, by the way, I don't think Pratt & Whitney and Rolls-Royce like you saying that that's normal. Those are jet engines that are licensed not to make trails. And I was just, I was disgusted. And it all ties back in my thought, what goes on like at 9/11, what's going on with all that lie, what's leading to all this in my thought, and until that's all uncovered, it's all going to stay the way it is. That's my thought.
It's all part and parcel to the same, and I would agree with the climate engineering issue. What's unique about that issue, this issue, is it affects everyone equally, and it's going on every single day. It can't be hit. Even with issues as grave as 9/11, our own government being involved with blowing up buildings to use as a premise to wage limitless war, for many Americans, I'm sorry to say, once that issue's passed, if they think it's not going to affect them, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to stand up from the herd. They don't want to complicate their lives. But climate engineering can't hide it. So I would argue if we could expose climate engineering, all the other stuff will come with it. I mean, look at the Kennedy assassination. Who can't figure out that that was a conspiracy? Not a conspiracy theory, a conspiracy. I mean, how glaring can the evidence be? And yet, when they're locking up files for 50 years and then extending that 50 years even more, I mean, it's glaring. But the climate engineering issue, again, because it's the greatest threat and the most difficult to hide much longer, if we all focused on that one spot in the armor, and if we can put a hole in the armor there, a breach in the dam, if you will, all the rest will come with it. All the rest will.
Yeah. There was one other thing I wanted to relate. I heard a couple of callers, a couple of things. One was the taste in the mouth. I used to notice that 6 months ago when I watched you up there in Shasta County with that group that made that presentation, which, by the way, was absolutely fantastic. I sent it to my son, and he sent it to everyone. He's 19 years in the Coast Guard, and now he sent it to all his friends. So it's going around. And also, the smart technology I heard mentioned. If everybody knows what that actually means, it means self-maintaining, accessing, and reporting technology. Biggest rollout since alcohol, tobacco, and everything combined. And we're all involved in it. And it all goes right along with the HARP, geoengineering, and all of it. It's all combined. It
does. And again, back to the money issue and those who print that and control everything. Again, we most have heard the quote, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." And that's exactly where we're at. And the American public has been the global populations have been so caught up in this fossil fuel fiesta, in the words of James Gumpster. That's what we have. The only reason that things have gone this far is we've burnt up 20 million years of stored hydrocarbon in 100 years and really looted the planet, and that's not going to continue. So, but those who print the money are invested in trying to make it continue to the last possible moment. So we all have to wake up. But thank you for participating. And for the record, and I think, Russ, you can elaborate on your position on this too, but I've said many times, it's a fact, I'm not a political activist. I'm not an activist of any type. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do or thought I would be doing for the last 12, 13 years. But quite simply, there's no choice. There's no choice. This has to be done. So thank you for you participating. And Russ, that's the case with you too. This is not something you really planned on doing, is it?
Not at all. No, I never dreamed ever that I would be doing something like this. I had ideas for my life and things that were important to me that I wanted to do. And because I'm somebody who is so sensitive to this material and I have symptoms similar to COPD, that's one of the several symptoms I have based on massive inflammation that I have from this. I have no choice but to be involved because it has completely ruined my quality of life and my health, and I struggle every day with it. So yeah, I never dreamed I would be doing this.
Well, the bottom line is if we wish for whatever we get, then we get what we wish for. I mean, if this is something that we're faced with, the best thing to do is embrace it and to find out the goods that are in it, because we're not writing this play, but we're all acting in it. If we play our part well, the play will come out well, but we all have to play our part. So it's up to each of us. But thanks for participating, Brad.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, thanks so much for calling, Dave. Appreciate your call. Caller with the number ends in 20. 20. Who are we speaking with? Caller with your phone number that ends in 20. Are you there? Okay, caller with your number that ends in 87. Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Hi, who are we speaking with?
My name's Chuck. I'm in the Bay Area.
Hi,
Okay.
Chuck. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, first, thank you for all your work, the two of you. You guys have done so much. My question is, I'm trying to understand a little more the science of it. And I understand how low pressures are created with the HARP heaters, bulging the ionosphere and then creating a low pressure area. But how are they manipulating this high pressure and parking it off the West Coast?
Well, with the ionosphere heaters and the aerosolization, in the course of creating that heat, what we have seen on certain days, and you may have seen this, Chuck, that the days when the trails are shorter and they appear to dissipate, but you end up with a silvery white sky.
Right.
So on those days, we see higher UV radiation, not lower, but higher. So are they creating a lens effect somehow with that? There's a lot of aspects of these programs we can't know, but why would the UV be higher when we have particulates in the atmosphere? So if they are creating, I'm having a, Russ, can you hear me? Russ?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, okay, my audio disappeared for a minute. I have a loud click on my end. I can hear my voice coming back at me. My audio disappeared for about 5 seconds there. That's why my voice went out. So if they are creating some type of a lens effect and generating that heat, which would help to generate that high pressure, that the sinking air that creates the heat, then this is what we've seen over and over again on the West Coast. The blanket spraying of the Eastern Pacific, which we've documented on radar, and we have the flows of moisture that, if you saw the video I posted only 2 days ago, I believe, that shows that flow of moisture that's plowing right into the U.S. West Coast, and is that ionosphere heating goes on, and that air is pushed down in conjunction with if they're trying to actually heat the atmosphere, because that's when we see them spraying at night. The only times we see them spraying at night is when we see these high pressure domes built. So are they indeed at that point trying to create high pressure? And that's what we have over and over, so it appears that's part of the process.
Okay. Do you understand, can you explain how the SBX mobile seed platforms are being used in conjunction with the HARP?
Well, if we have a network of these radio frequency transmitters, there's a lot of things they could be being used for. Project Lucy and Project Alamo as well. Are you familiar with those?
No, I'm not.
That's something that should be looked up, because I think that's part of what these SBX transmitters are being used for. Project Lucy and Alamo are, we believe, underway right now. That's the appearance of the noctilucent clouds that are happening all over the globe.
Mm-hmm.
This is an attempt the stated attempt, and there's a lot of data on this in several studies, to degrade the methane that's building up in the atmosphere by exposing it to opposing frequencies from these transmitters. So this is where layer upon layer of insanity begins to heap up. So we have a disruption of the upper level wind currents. That's in many ways a direct result of the climate engineering to begin with. That's disrupted ocean currents. That's now putting warmer water where it shouldn't be, and especially in the case of the Arctic, we have warm water. Pardon me? I had some background noise, Russ. I wasn't sure who that was talking. I'm getting some serious audio stuff on my end. But so we have warm water where it shouldn't be. That's releasing methane into the atmosphere. So what do? Use the same mechanisms that have helped cause the problem to begin with to supposedly try to mitigate some of that problem. Again, to microwave the atmosphere to try to degrade the methane. So there's a lot of different uses for these installations, we believe, and that particular use should scare the hell out of people. Project Lucy, Project Alamo, and Google search that with the word methane behind it, and you'll find data on both of those. So
I'll look it up.
Okay,
Can I ask one more question?
I'm sorry?
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
Yeah. So I know you don't like to go to the dark side and explain why and focus on, exposing this, but do you see any connection between the geoengineering and, the alternative 3 kind of thought?
Elaborate.
So are you aware of there's a movie that came out in 1977 called Alternative 3 with alternative, where they looked into the future and they had seen catastrophic environmental changes to the earth. And so the alternative 1 was to try to mitigate or change the environment. Alternative 2 was to bunker in place, all the DUMBs. And alternative 3 was to, make it to another rock.
I haven't gone far into that, but it's an interesting subject. And in fact, in the manner in which you mention this, and this is an interesting paradox to look at. Is it more or less like the grandfather scenario? If one could travel through time, you would keep triggering the same scenario over and over. So, wouldn't it be a paradox if this is that type of scenario where if there was anybody who had any glimpse of the future and saw these events and then implemented the very programs that caused the events to happen to begin with, is this a chicken or the egg syndrome?
Yeah, I would agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
So, I mean, would it be that type of scenario where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy? And many seem to have seen this. I mean, I'm fascinated about this as well. The Hopi prophecies that in the time of great change, they said there would be cobwebs spun in the sky. Now,
right,
that's very fascinating to me. You have this in a lot of cultures that people seem to have seen this coming, and then we have just simply people like Henry David Thoreau and Mark Twain who saw this coming. The Native Americans who saw it coming. That's my distant background as well. Because if you had the certain mindset that we have with the Caucasian settlers, it could only end this way because they could never get enough. They could never get enough of anything, and many saw that coming. So that's an interesting point you bring up, though, Chuck. Very interesting point. One to ponder, for sure. And in the meantime, let's keep trying to expose this for what it is at face value as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think if this wall were to come down, everything else would be exposed.
Yes, and that's the point I make. It's not that other issues aren't important. It's that if we focus on this first, it will drag everything else with it and allow us to keep functioning because we won't lose our health from breathing this stuff every day. So, yes, I'm with you 100% on that. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks you
Chuck.
again, both of you. Okay,
Chuck,
take care.
You.
Yeah, Chuck, thank you so much for calling. We're down to our final 60 seconds. And Dane, we have a whole panel full of callers. I apologize to the callers who we didn't get to today, but please try again next week. But Dane, Vincent said you might want to mention, and we both might want to mention, that this isn't about the money for us. Any thoughts on that to close us out?
I don't know what else to say, but I've spent my whole entire SEP account in the last 12 years, period. Haven't had any source of income for 12 years, so people can point whatever finger they want, but that's the fact of the matter. So there's no ads on my site at all, zero, and I simply want clean skies. That's my objective, and bottom line is we need everybody to help with that as well. So with whatever resource you can, help us sound the alarm with printed flyers, anything you can use as a tool. Every day counts. So
absolutely,
none of us are in this for anything other than the fight, Russ.
Me neither. I spend about $150 a month out of my pocket to maintain my servers. I make very little back.
Same here.
Yep, I'm out of pocket on this.
Them say it's fight, and then I listen to them. Something strange
Truth on the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here